Okay, so whenever you guys are ready, you can begin.
Ready? Okay. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good morning to Mr. E and my teammates. My name is Adrana Rosali, and my teammates are.
I am Anis Ruzana binti Muhammad Rashidi.
And I am Adila Farihim Tikhalil.
And today we will be presenting on Merrill's instructional design and also Gestalt's designs of theory. So I will be starting with some brief introductions of Merrill's principles, and also I will be explaining on the first point of Merrill's principle. Okay, so Merrill's Principles was founded by M. David Merrills in 2002. It is an instructional design that is improving theories and models for when designing a program or for a course. And also in this Merrill's Principle, it has 5 design principles, which are firstly problem-centered. The second one is activation. The third one is demonstrations. The fourth one is application. And the last one is integration. All right, so I will start with problem-centered. So in this problem-centered, learning is promoted where learners are engaged in solving real-world problems, Merrills 1992. So in problem-centered, there are 3 levels. The first one is show task. The second one is task levels. And the last one is problem progressions. So in the first one is show task, learners are provided with work examples of a task, which meaning that learners is shown with the task that they can do or a problem that they will be able to do by the end of finishing a model or a course. So usually when we see that, for examples, in a course, we can see that in the learning objectives, it will state as by the end of this course, learners will be able to yada yada. So usually the stories say that learners should be given with a specific demonstrations of the task similar with what the learners will be able to do. Because in this, you will provide a better orientations so that learners can be able to follow the instructions better, compared to by giving a list of abstract statements such as the learning objectives stated earlier. Okay, the next one is in task levels. So in task levels, usually in instructioners, they will provide learners with a separate component, individual components, and they will assume that learners will be able to put together all these individual components, which should be replaced with giving learners 4 levels of instructions, which are: the first one is the problem, the second one is the task required to solve the problem, and the third one is the operations comprised for the task, and the last one is operations that comprised of the operation. So when all these 4 levels are followed by the learners, and learners will be able to effectively have a learning, effectively learn. And the last one in problem statement is problem progression. So in problem progressions, learners should be introduced with a less complex problem before they shift into a more complex problem. Because usually when learners are given with little to no guidance of what they can do, this will come out as ineffective. So in ensuring effective learning, learners should be able to master the less complex problems, and then only then they will be able to move into a more complex problem, so that when the more complex problems have already mastered by the learners, then learners will be able to master the whole course itself. Okay, so they comprise of all the problem centered. I will shift to Anis Ruzana.
Okay, thank you, Adriana. Okay, I'll be explaining about Merrill's 2nd until 5th principles. Okay, let's move to activation, the 2nd Merrill's principle. Activation is when the learning is promoted when existing knowledge is activated as a foundation for new knowledge. There are also 3 phases of activation. The first one is previous experience. This is focusing into learners' existing knowledge and experiences. It is to identify where the learners are at before introducing them to the new content or new knowledge. The second one is new experience. It is to ensure tasks are interesting, engaging, and authentic, so that the oh the learners, the acquiring the acquiring information is not enough. So the learners must be able to link in to their existing knowledge and experiences, so that it will help them to prepare for building upon it, or it is called scaffolding. Okay, the next one is structure. Structure is to add real world examples, simulations, and stories that meld the old with the new. It means that it is to help the learners to learn and apply it to for them to make a difference between the old, to relate it with the old with the new one. Okay. Next, we will move to the third Merrill's third principle, that is demonstration. Okay. Demonstration. In demonstration, learning is promoted or delivered when new knowledge is demonstrated to the learner. There are three phases of demonstration. The first one is demonstration consistency. It is to provide content with demonstration and examples that reflect the learning outcomes. As for example, if we want to teach someone, to teach the learner, we must show them by example, so that they will follow us and do the same thing. Then the second one is learner guidance. It is to provide multiple representations of ideas, concepts, and perspectives. From the learner guidance, it will help the learners to understand better by providing them multiple examples, so that they will get a better understanding and better knowledge. And the third phase of demonstration is relevant media. It is to ensure media support effective learning. Somehow, the media, some form of media is can what we call it can demonstrate a better example to the learner, a better demonstration to the learner, so that they can understand better. Okay, for the fourth Merrill's application, it is called application. Merrill's principle, sorry, it is called application. The application is when the learning is promoted, when new knowledge is applied by the learner. Okay. The first phase of application is practice consistency. This is to align practice activities with learning outcomes, so that the learners will practice it, the learners will practice it and try to apply in their life. The second one is diminishing coaching. It is gradually withdraw coaching to build learner independence. It means that when the learner learns something, the guidance will be reduced little by little, so that the learners will learn it independently without relying to the guidance 100%. And the last phase of application is varied problems. It is to provide opportunities for learners to apply their learning to different contexts. It means that it is to provide multiple opportunities to the learners for them to apply learning to a range of situations to consolidate the learning. Okay. Then the last one, the last Merrill's principle is integration. Integration, learning is promoted when new knowledge is integrated into the learner's life or the learner's world. For the first phase of integration is called Watch Me. It is to provide opportunities for learners to demonstrate and share their learning, meaning that when the learner learn something, they will be motivated to demonstrate their understanding and share it with the people. Then it goes to the second phase, which called reflection. It is include reflection activities to recognize progress. In our own experience, when we are learning something, we will feel motivated when we know our own progress. That is the reflection that we have when we recognize them. Then the last one for integration is creation. It is to encourage learners to transfer their learning to their own life. The demonstrating or sharing, when it is shared to other people, it will reflect to our understanding, to our knowledge, how much we understand it, how much we can absorb the knowledge, so that we will transfer it, we will apply it in our own life. Okay, I think that is all from me for the Merrill's instructional design principle.
Okay, so we will be moving on to Gestalt Principles of Design. In Gestalt Principle of Design, there are 5 points. I will be explaining the first 2 points, and then the rest will be handled by Adila Farihin. Okay, so Gestalt's Principles of Designs, it is principles that is mostly used by web designers for website content, also for interface. It is most commonly used for visual designings and often used by user experience designs, also known as UX design. Okay, so Gestalt Principles of Design, generally it is suggesting that human brains, they will attempt to simplify and organize complex things by unifying it as a whole, instead of just separating all the elements. So the human brains will subconsciously arrange all the parts into organized, then create a whole instead of just separating all the elements. So in Gestalt Principles of Designs, there are 5 principles, which are: the first one is similarity, second one is continuation, third one is closure, fourth is proximity, and the fifth one is figure and ground, and lastly is symmetry and order. Okay, so the first one is similarity. In similarity principle, similar elements in a design are visually grouped, and then all the elements in the designs can be grouped by the basic things like by colors, shapes, or sizes. So for examples, as we can see in the slides, all the squares are equally spaced and they were all in the same size. But our human eyes, our human brains will tend to group all the squares with the same color, because even though that because our human brains will tend to group the things with similar elements as a whole. So the elements doesn't necessarily have to be identical, but they just have to have one visible trait. As we can see, this one visible trait that we can see in the examples is the color. So in website designs, web designers usually will, if they want to make an element is this if they want to make an element stand out from the rest of it, they will make it in a different shapes or different size or different colors to make it to dissimulate it from the rest. For examples, as we can see, and let's say in shopping sites, in categories for, you can see that in shopping site they have categories for health and beauty, for electronicals, for clothing. So all the categories are usually designed with the same text size, which to indicate that the things are grouped the same. So that in shopping sites also we have some other settings functions such as profile, notifications, and also notifications, and also groups. So all the settings, the other settings functions are designed with a different text size compared to the categories to signify that it is different. It's a different group. So another examples is that we can see also in shopping website, which we can see that for some products, the indication text for free shippings are different with indications for, let's say, bestsellers, because we can see that they want to be the website designers want to separate these two elements. Okay, so next one is continuation. In continuation, audience eyes will follow the smoothest part when viewing lines, curves, parts of a design, regardless of how they are drawn. So our eyes tend to also see this as a continuous flow rather than a separated object. As you can see, the examples in the slides, there are two different lines and curves. One is straight line and the other one is a curves. But even though there is an interchange in the middle where the curves and the lines are separated by the two different colors, but because our own eyes tend to follow the smoother part of the lines, we tend to just simply follow what the originally line is, which is the curve and also straight lines, because this tool is usually used to guide audience eyes in a certain directions. The example is that in website designing, website designers will make use this principle to guide to include vital parts that they want the audience to see standing side by side with the objects that they want. For examples, in a shopping website, we can see that the similar products usually be put next to each other in a straight line, in a horizontal line, because they because in website designing, we want to ensure that the users will be able to find things in a short glance, and also that is to make it easier for users to understand the functions that are able in that are able in, the functions that are there are in the website. Okay, that's all for me, and then we'll move on with Adila Farihin.
Okay, so we moving on to the closure. Closure means that the idea of the meaning is our brain will fill in the missing parts at the design, and we will create it as a whole picture. Like um, the simplest explanation that I can say is it allows our eye to follow something like a dotted line to its end. For example, if we look at the dotted image, like even though it hasn't been dotted yet, we can see it as a clear image, and we will get to recognize the image as soon as possible, like as fast as possible. And if we look at the example below, the WWF logo, if we see the animal, which is panda, even though we can see that there are some parts that are missing at the top of the body, but we will see it as a whole image, like the real panda itself, not in the picture, and we will see it as, oh, it's a panda. We can easily recognize it's a panda. And it is quite often used in the logo design, such as NBC, Adobe, and Adobe. And for this kind of logo, we will apply it as a complex application. Moving on to the proximity. Proximity refers to how close the elements to one another, how our eyes perceive the connections between the elements. And the strongest proximity relationship are the one that has overlapping subjects, but we can group it into a single area, and it also considered as a strong proximity, as it is the best application that we can say to people. Like, for example, in the picture below, there are two different image, but it has the same characteristic. Basically, the lines in these two pictures it has the same number of lines, but the difference is that the second picture, it has been categorized into three distinct groups. But if we look at closely, it actually has the same characteristic, but people will look at it as a two different images. So if we show it to people, rather than people see it as, oh, it's basically the same, but they would think like that, but they will say, oh, there are two different image, and this one is a one element, and the other for the right one, they will say, oh, there are three elements that is included in the picture. And um oh yeah, by using the proximity, users can group things without using any things such as the hardcover. People do not have to categorize it by using the hardcover. Instead, they can just put the elements into, like I said before, into we'll separate it, and we can add space into it, and people can get to see the image. Moving on to the figure and ground. Figure and ground is similarly like closure principle, but it has negative space. The element on the of this principle, it has a negative space, which means that um, we can get to see the background as another image. Uh, so in other words, there are actually in one picture it has two different it has two different image. Like for the people, we see at the larger area of an image as the ground and the smaller area as figure. For example, the picture in the slide, some people will see the image as people will see it, the image of a tree, and some people will see it the image of two animals, which are King Kong and also a lion staring at each other. But if we look at it closely, we can distinguish it. We can distinguish it later, but still, people will get to recognize. Oh, there are actually two pictures in one image, and colors also can influence the image. Like for example, some people will can recognize the picture as a tree, because the darker color can be seen fastly compared to the white one, isn't it? So in other words, that what is viewed as a figure and also what is viewed as a ground can be differ to anyone. Okay, lastly is the symmetry and order. It also known as pregnance. The German word means a good figure. Our brain usually perceive ambiguous shapes as simple a manner as possible. Like, even though it is ambiguous, but we will perceive it to the simplest meaning. Means that if we look at the monochrome version of the Olympic logo, I bet a lot of people will see it as of an overlap circles in the picture, rather than a collection of curved lines, because the simplest shape that people will see is of course the circle, because it's obviously being drawn there. And but if people doesn't know the real meaning of the logo, if they don't know the meaning, but if they do know the meaning of the logo, people might see it, oh, it's a collection of curved lines, not the overlapping circles on the picture. But for another, like, okay, I give another example. Like, even if we put a lot of shapes and being overlapped to each other in one color. For example, after we put all the shapes, after we overlap the shapes, and we color it as a one color only, which is black, but people can still see the shapes, like, oh, this is triangle, this is circle, this is rectangle, rather than see it as a new shape, because we already know, and our brain basically already interpret the overlap shapes as the shapes that we have been known. Yeah, I think that's all. Okay. Thank you.